they would have worked a lot on electronic warfare, and therefore what Aurangzeb said, that they had good electronic intelligence, that is very much possible because they have good electronic warfare. Now, when you have good electronic intelligence, that means you are in a position to make a very good electronic order of battle, a framework knowing fully well what asset of the enemy is where. And once you have a good electronic order of battle, based on that, one can make a very good, credible electronic warfare offensive campaign. So you see, one things lead to the other. So when we have these two things, which is a credible electronic warfare campaign capabilities and an electronic order of battle, this then is at the heart of the war concept that Aurangzeb spoke about, which is the multi-domain operations. And this combination is what is needed for a competitive, if not a superiority in the electromagnetic spectrum. I'll just come to that, why it is important. Now, as far as this war concept is concerned, the multi-domain operation, it basically means that all the assets which are there in space, airborne assets, ground assets, they are all linked, data linked with the fighter. And the key thing here is that in all these assets which are data linked by software, there should be a free flow of information. And hence the importance of electronic warfare, and hence the importance of having a superiority or a competitiveness in the electromagnetic spectrum. Then we also know that this digital ecosystem, which is what leads to the war concept of multi-domain operations, the Pakistan Air Force has been exercising, doing advanced exercises every year since 2019 with PLAF, which is their Shaheen series of exercises. So they have been exercising in this. And therefore, when we look at the hardware that they had used in this operation, which is the combination of J-10 aircraft with the PL-15 missile, a BVR, Beyond Visual Range Advanced Missile, it worked very well with this digital ecosystem on which the Pakistan Air Force had been training for the last 5 years, 6 years rather. And how this worked is that it was the airborne asset perhaps which did the identification and the tracking of the Indian fighter, and that information was passed to the fighter from their airborne asset to their own fighter, which is J-10, without the J-10 pilot opening his own radar, otherwise he would have given his location away. And based on that information that the fighter got, he released the missile PL-15, which I said is an advanced missile. It is a missile that went 200 kilometers. So initially this is pre-programmed, it has its own inertial navigation system. Then this missile has a two-way data link, which obviously would have been with the airborne asset. And in the terminal phase, it has its own ISA radar to lock on and get the target. This is how this whole thing worked. So the point to make here is very simple. The modern warfare, or the warfare that we are talking of today, it is the age of BVR missiles, Beyond Visual Range missiles. And for that, it is important that electronic warfare has to be very good, because this is how it works. Good electronic warfare will bring you to the multi-domain operations, and they in turn provide the backing, the digital ecosystem to this BVR missile firing. So all this is possible that they've been talking about, and they've also provided evidence about their claims or the kills that they have made, and plenty has been said on this, so I won't say any further. Let's talk of the Indian side now. The presentation or the talk given by the Air Chief. Now the Air Chief, he spoke only about the Air Force fighters, only in respect to the first night 6-7, where he said that they were used on 2 targets at Muridke and Bhavalpur. And thereafter, he has not mentioned the fighters. And then in summing up, he gave all that was taken out by the Indian Air Force, and in this order he mentioned 2 command and control centers of the Pakistan Air Force, their 6 radars big and small, then 2 SAM systems, then damaged runways, then 3 hangars where the F-16s were there perhaps for maintenance, and an AEW aircraft. And then he spoke about the S-400 that took out these S-6 aircraft that I mentioned in the beginning. So when he was talking all this, he put that in the end, the taking out of the Indian fighters, the Pakistan fighters, that was in the end, he said, which is a bit strange because this should have been the lead of what he wanted to say. Okay, now his narrative is absolutely plausible, taking this out with S-400, because I recall 5 years back, I was there outside Moscow where this army exhibition, defense exhibition is held, and I had a long chat with a senior representative of 𝚤𝚘𝚏𝚗𝚘𝚘, the company that manufactures S-400. And he confirmed to me that it is a very advanced and a good system. It's a mobile system. It's a shoot and scoot system. And this system has the capability to detect targets at 600 kilometers. It can track 300 targets at one time, and it has a variety of missiles. Its long-range missile is a range of 400 kilometers. So when the air chief spoke about 300 kilometers, it's all plausible. So all this is doable. So far so good. But now the problem starts. The first thing that comes to mind is that why did the air chief not identify the type of fighters which were brought down? He said 5 fighters. Because there is no doubt at all that this system, it can detect the targets at 600 kilometers, and if the target is small, then certainly at 400 kilometers, and the chief was talking about all targets within 300 kilometers. So he should have identified what were these fighters, JF-17, F-16s, J-10s, what? He didn't do that, so this is intriguing. Second, he provided no evidence at all of what he said. Next, how is it possible that for all these 3 months, nobody in the world picked up or knew about this? That so many aircraft had been lost by the Pakistan Air Force. It's a big thing, but nobody wrote about this. Then, we also know that as far as Americans are concerned, they have this end user monitoring clause with all the countries where they give their assets. So obviously, if there was a damage to F-16 in the hangar, or if it was shot down by the S-400, certainly the news would have come out. It's very surprising that this didn't happen. No news was heard on this at all. And here is the thing, a very big thing, that the government of India, it came out with an official press release of the Ministry of Defense about the talk given by the air chief, which did not mention about the shooting of these 6 aircraft by the Indian Air Force. And the release is here for the viewers to see. And of course, the next question is the timing. Why is it that the Indian Air Force spoke about such a big news after 3 months? Why not at that time? But I'll answer this question in a while. Now let's move on to the next thing. And the next thing is that in all his talk so far, the chief only spoke about the surface-to-air missiles. Basically, he was talking about the BrahMos, he was talking about LR-SAMs, he was talking about the S-400s. So we know that they are important in the Air Force when we are talking of air superiority. They support the fighters, they are important. But they by themselves are not enough to have an air superiority, because they are all defensive systems. As far as BrahMos is concerned, we know it's a land attack offensive strike capability, and that's fine. But as far as the surface-to-air missiles are concerned, they're all defensive. So the requirement of the fighters is critical because they are versatile and they provide the offensive capabilities needed for air superiority. And we also know that all these defensive systems, the surface-to-air missiles, whether you S-400 or any other system, you just buy the system, and what they require is a unidirectional skill. It has various components. It is a teamwork. It has a radar. It has a command and control system. It has then launchers. So the point I'm making is that this unidimensional skill, it can be picked up very fast. It's not a big deal. The big deal is with the fighters and the pilots, because that is where uh, it is not a teamwork. The pilot, he is both the single source of success and failure. And the pilot is operating in a hostile environment, which is a three-dimensional environment, and it is under severe G forces. So on top of that, now we are also talking about a digital ecosystem backing the fighter. So the point to make is that this is the most important part of the Indian Air Force, and this is the reason that the chief talks about when he talks of the capability of the Indian Air Force. He's talking about the combat squadrons, their strength. And this is the question the media also asks him. So all this that the Indian Air Force, or what the chief has said, is about these defensive systems, air defense systems. So what about the fighters of the Indian Air Force? Well, he didn't say much about that, but we heard about that from the Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan. It was when he was at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. This was on the 31st of May that he spoke to the Bloomsbury television, and he said in response to a question that in the initial stages there were losses. How many he didn't specify, but he said we rectified tactics, and on 10th of May we went in full force. Now it becomes very obvious what rectification of tactics he's talking of. Obviously, instead of the fighters, they brought in these systems, the defensive systems that I'm talking about. So the big question still hangs, something that should have been answered by the Air Chief. What happened to the Air Force on the night of 8th and 9th? Was the Air Force grounded? These are very critical questions. Now, this was not said. Now, next is, I was referring to the timing. Why was it not spoken of? Such a big news that 6 kills had happened for 3 months, and why suddenly now? So for that, please watch this clip. This clip I have picked up from the Twitter, from a handle 𝚘𝚎𝚘𝚗𝚘, and I have attributed to that handle also. Please listen in.
You went into Pakistan, you attacked Pakistan, and you told our pilots, do not attack their air defense system. Meaning you told our pilots, go and attack and face the air defense system of Pakistan. Meaning you tied their hands behind their back.
If I can say, what were the reasons for success? One, which I can think of, is that there was political will. I'm being very, very candid here, very open here, because I hear various versions of it. I think if I tell you something, people will have to believe, because I was there listening to everybody, attending every meeting. There was very clear political will, very clear directions which were given to us, and there were no kind of restrictions which were put on it. Many people have spoken somewhere. Unfortunately, everybody is speaking about it. कि कुछ ना कुछ मैं बोल दूंगा इस बारे में. So there have been talks about, was there any restriction? Were you kept constrained? If there were any constraints, they were self-made. We, the forces, decided what will be our rules of engagement. We, the forces, decided what will be the escalation ladder that we want to ride on. We decided how we want to control the escalation. So I want to make it very clear. There were no, I repeat, no restrictions on us. Full freedom was given to us to plan and execute.
Now it becomes very clear from the clip that what the leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi said in the parliament, that came straight from what the Indian naval advisor Captain Shiv Kumar, had said in a seminar there in Indonesia. Now, in that seminar, Shiv Kumar, while accepting that the Indian Air Force had losses, he didn't quantify the loss. he attributed that to the constraints that were put on the Indian Air Force, that they were told not to hit the air defense systems of the Pakistan Air Force. Therefore, this was the right time for the Air Chief to clarify on that point, the point that had been raised by the Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, that whether that constraint was there or it wasn't there, but he did not speak specifically about this. Now, in his overall speech and this portion of the clip, the chief speaks about the reasons for the success of Operation Sindoor, which he attributes to three things. One, he says that there was political will. In this, he says that a very clear political objective was given, which was to teach the terrorists a lesson. And by political will, he meant that beyond this objective, giving the objective, no restrictions were put on the military leadership. They were given a free hand. If there were any restrictions, they were self-imposed by the military leadership themselves, who decided the rules of engagement. So that is one thing he says. Second thing which he attributes to the success of Operation Sindoor is the post of Chief of Defence Staff, which he said made a difference. And third, he said that I had full freedom. Now let's examine all these 3 points that he has said, juxtaposing this to the big speech that he made on that occasion, where he said much more. Now, when we examine this part, which is the political objective to teach the terrorist a lesson. Now, my question is, or rather anybody would ask this question is it fair, is it sensible, is it correct to use air power, which is, as far as India, Pakistan are concerned, this is the highest asset that we have for a terrorist operation. And then also, was this constraint there or not that Shiv Kumar spoke about? That also should be clarified.